further ado, I want to introduce a young lady that is no stranger to Trinity County folks, as many remember her fondly from her gallant and well-done run for U.S. Senate back in 2012. She did an amazing job for a complete political novice. So amazing that even though Ted Cruz won the U.S. Senate race, he hired her to work for him in his Austin office. Yeah. Smart man. It was a good move on his part, and she is now, she got a promotion, the State Operations Coordinator, did I do that right? In his federal office in Austin. We are so happy that she was able to be with us tonight to tell us all about her boss. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and give a big Trinity County welcome to Lela Pettinger.
Wait, don't you go anywhere. Whoa. Did anyone clap for Mickey this evening? Because she has done an extraordinary job getting everything organized and making sure it all runs on time.
Amen.
So I've traveled the state, not only, I'm not done with you. I have traveled the state not only on the senator's behalf, but on my own when I was campaigning. And I've seen a lot of Tea Parties, and I'm going to tell you right now, you guys are very blessed. I've seen a lot of them collapse because of egos and behaviors that were inappropriate. I've seen a lot of them collapse because they've completely exhausted their leadership and no one else is willing to step up and help. I've seen very few stand as long and as strong as this group has here. And I know a big part of that is because this woman right here has nerves of steel and a heart from the Lord. And so I think you guys definitely need to make sure you show your appreciation for Mickey because she's an amazing woman. All right. Do you guys prefer the microphone or would you rather I talk to you like this?
The microphone.
Microphone? Okay. All right, I am Lela Pittenger, and I am the State Operations Coordinator for U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. For those of you who don't know me, Mickey is right. I ran for the U.S. Senate seat that Kay Bailey Hutchison left back in 2012. Many of you may remember she was running for governor against Rick Perry, and she said, no matter what happens, win or lose, I'm going to step down from my Senate seat. So we all thought there would be 2 years left in her Senate seat, and we were running for a special election. So in January of 2010, I filed my paperwork. When she lost in the primary, she decided to stay in her Senate seat, and that it would expire in 2012. So what we thought would be a 5-month race became a 2.5-year race, much longer than I had anticipated. In that time, I went to 450 meetings, events, and rallies, had my son along the way, and worked my job for half of it. By the time we crossed the finish line, I was the only woman with 8 men in the U.S. Senate race. I feel like I held my own. It was an amazing experience. I got to know all of the candidates along the way. Many of you may remember that no one had enough votes to have a simple majority in the primary. So it came down to, at the time, Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst and an unknown at the time, Ted Cruz, former Solicitor General who had worked under now Governor Greg Abbott. I lost on Tuesday. On Friday, future Senator Ted Cruz called and said, basically, I like what you say and I like how you say it. I said, I like you too. He said, can I have your support? And I said, sure. Do you want a volunteer or a staffer? And the only time I've ever heard him stutter, he said, I'll take either one. And I said, great. So I lost on Tuesday. He called me on Friday. I met his people on Monday. I was working for him on Tuesday. On Thursday, I was at the state convention representing him. Went through the runoff, and in 6 weeks, I traveled 6,000 miles speaking on his behalf as a surrogate speaker, somewhat like I'm doing this evening. And when he won that race, they decided to keep me, which was wonderful because I needed a job. I've been working for him ever since. It'll be 3 years on June the 7th. I've been honored to work on the campaign side when he was in the runoff as well as in the general election. Once he won the general election, then they hired me on to the federal staff, and I was his Central Texas Regional Director for all of 2013, which meant I covered 28 counties for him as a two-way point of communication. Then they came to me and they said, help, we need some help on the campaign side. This was before he was running for president. There's, believe it or not, when you're running for U.S. Senate, even though your 6-year term is 6 years, you have to raise enough money to actually run again, because in the state of Texas, it takes anywhere from $12 to $25 million to run a statewide race. So they're raising money basically the day after they win to get ready for the next round, because it takes so much time. So they asked me to go back over to the campaign side, and I spent all of 2014 working on the U.S. Senate campaign and helping with his leadership PAC, which is called the Jobs, Growth, and Freedom Fund. Then he decided to run for president. Moved his campaign from Austin to Houston, because that's where he lives, that's where his family is based. And we had conversations about whether it was better for me to move to Houston with my child or whether it was better for me to stay in Austin. And they asked me to stay in Austin, and they put me in the federal office again, now as the state operations coordinator, which basically means I make sure everyone has what they need to do their job, and then I follow up to make sure they did do their job. And I have a fantastic boss. I hope you all get to meet the state director for Senator Cruz. Her name is Catherine McAden. She is an amazing woman who's done an incredible job keeping a handle on the state for the senator. However, on the federal side, we do not work for the presidential campaign. Let me be abundantly clear. This is my personal time. This is my free time. I am not here as his representative from the federal offices. I hope you got that on film. Now, are we ready to go? All right, so Ted Cruz is running for president. Is anyone in this room excited about that aside from me? Good. Okay. Very good place where we're starting. All right, so what is he doing right now? What does his schedule look like? What is his daily life? He's still a senator, so he actually spends the vast majority of his time in Washington, D.C., much to all of our chagrin. Frankly, I think D.C. should go to the every 2-year legislative session as opposed to this nonstop meeting that they have going on in Washington. He's there. Usually he flies out Monday morning from Houston, leaves his family, flies up to D.C., usually stays till Thursday afternoon or evening, depending on what the votes are, what's coming up for vote, whether someone's doing a filibuster. There's any number of reasons why he won't get to leave. If he gets to leave, then he'll frequently fly home to be with his family and do meetings and events across the state of Texas. Since he took office January 1st of 2013, he's done 168 events in this state. Yeah, that's a lot. When you think about how much he has to be in Washington, D.C., and then how much he'd really like to be with his wife and his 2 daughters, he is working hard. I've told people this many times. I grew up in an agriculture family where we worked from dark to dark. My dad used to say, if you're only working 12 hours, you're only working half time. I never in my life met anyone who worked as hard as my father until I met Senator Cruz. I've seen his schedule. When he's in D.C., it's usually 8 different meetings and committee hearings a day that he has to sit in on and be a part of that meeting. And he still manages to get in, to even drop in for a lot of other meetings that the legislative staff is having with any number of people. He's in there, even if he can only stay for a minute because he's going to a committee hearing on space, or he's going to the Armed Services Committee hearing on the Constitution, any number of committees where he's serving, he still works hard to either pull out quickly so he can come say hello to county judges, to mayors, to people who've come to visit from all over the state, people he knows that are coming to D.C. He works very, very hard to meet everyone all the time. Sometimes it drives us all a little nuts because that means we're shuttling him everywhere. We got to make sure he gets there on time. And God bless him, he loves to visit with everyone. He wants to give everyone quality time. And so sometimes that means we have to pull him away and we look like the bad guy. But he's working very, very hard up there. When he's not in D.C. right now, he is traveling all over Texas, but right now he's also traveling to Iowa, to South Carolina, New Hampshire, really getting out in the early voting states, really getting out and talking to people, because while we know him and love him, they mostly know just what they see from sound bites and news clips on Fox News or any of the other news outlets, which might be slightly slanted. Might be. I'm not accusing, I'm just saying it's possible. So it's his job to just really get out there right now and let everyone know what he believes, why he believes what he does. Tell them his story, his background, who he is, what he's come from. Many of you are familiar with his father, Reverend Raphael Cruz, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. When the senator can't get there, frequently his father will go so that he can communicate and share with people. They're going to every kind of group you can imagine, whether it's Chamber of Commerce or it is visiting churches, tea parties, Republican clubs, nonpartisan, anyone that invites them to speak. They're working very hard to get someone there if the senator can't be there. In the meantime, we have staff based in Houston. That's where the office is now. There's no more campaign staff in Austin. It's all just the federal offices. So that's what he does. His wife also travels with him a great deal, which I'm very excited about. I can't wait for all of you to get to know Heidi Cruz. She's an extraordinary woman. She's the perfect complement to him, and she's probably the only person out there that I would say I might like better than him. She's fantastic. She's highly intelligent. She's a woman who loves the Lord. She has lived as a missionary in 2 different African countries when she was a child growing up. She's very, very much committed to the people who serve the Lord, but need the Lord as well. Very passionate woman. You guys are going to love her. I can't wait for you to get to know her better. In the meantime, I think there's no speech that I could give that's really going to make you feel more rah-rah about him. I think it would be much better if I just let you ask any question you want. And if I know the answer, I will answer it to the best of my ability. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know. But I think that would be much more effective, a much better way to spend your time this evening than listen to me go on and on about someone that I think is amazing. And I think you have a pretty decent idea of how amazing he is as well. So with that, I thank you all for coming tonight. I thank you, Mickey, for letting me come and having the opportunity to be questioned this evening. And I'll be more than happy to take any questions you have right now. Thank you. Yes, sir. Could you tell me your name?
Bill Bond. I don't have a question. I'd just like for you to pass on to the senator how much I appreciate him approaching the Pentagon and trying to get something straightened out on this J-15.
Yes, sir. I will definitely pass that on. We know there's a lot of people concerned about that. We've gotten a lot of calls, emails, and personal touches from people like yourself who have come with concerns. So thank you for sharing that, and I will pass that on. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I know there are inquiring minds. Don't y'all even pretend. Yes, sir.
So Lela, a year or
Wait,
so.
I'm sorry, tell your name.
My name's Andre, Colonel Dean. I'm running for Congress, but I'm huge for.
Just throw that in there if you could.
Well, yeah, for Ted. My campaign actually says I stand with Ted on my literature because I stand with Ted. It's pretty cool. Great guy. But a few years ago, last year and a half ago, he had multiple threats on his life. I read them. It was, I'm going to drag you out of the house, and let's converge on his home, drag you out of the house, and beat you to death in front of your wife and children.
He also threatened his wife, his children, and his father.
Right, but he was going to be beaten to death, and they were going to be abused. Was kind of the way it was. But he actually had to move out of his private residence and move into a more secure condominium or high-rise or some kind. Can you tell us how the security of Ted right now, based on when you stand for moral principles? Sometimes there's another side that actually hates you. I mean, like Christ. I mean, it's like you want to kill Jesus Christ. If you want to kill Christ, you want to kill a guy like Ted Cruz who stands for great values. That's a dark side that we often don't hear about. But can you? I'd like some comfort level of that he and the children, Caroline and Catherine and Heidi, are really safe right now.
Okay, so thank you for asking that. That is true. He has been threatened. There are a lot of people who have a strong dislike for what he believes, what he says, what he does. And there's just some people out there that are mentally imbalanced. And it's not even about necessarily something he's done. That's just where they are, mentally and emotionally. We take everything very seriously. He and his family do live in a secure home. It's in a condominium in Houston. They do have security on the property. It's a very safe place. I've been there. I'm not going to talk much more about it because I don't feel like I have the right to discuss what their living arrangements are. I don't feel like that will be helping to their safety. But what I will say is whenever we have events, we have security, and we take extraordinary precautions with the senator, his wife, his children, and his father. I know the Houston event, many of you probably heard about that, just at the March 31st, I think it was, that particular event where he announced in the state that, yes, the open house that he was running. We had 700 people RSVP to that in less than 24 hours. We took very seriously. We had 6 different police officers on site, people assigned to each of them individually, as well as people roaming the property. We take it very seriously. We do not spare expense when it comes to their lives. Now, the senator and his father would tell you they're not worried about anything, but I tell them very plainly, I will not look in those little girls' eyes and tell them I didn't do enough to make sure their dad and their grandfather and their mother was safe.
Thanks, Lou.
So we all feel that way. It's taken very seriously. The Senate security also takes very seriously the threats that have come in to him and his family. They monitor everything. Secret Service pays very close attention as well. So yes, sir, thank you for asking. They are safe, but more than anything, they trust the Lord more than they trust human beings, that's for sure. I saw another one. Yes, sir. You have to say your name.
I'm Corey Rapp. In regards to the NSA, does Ted Cruz have a definition of metadata, and what's his feeling toward the collection of metadata?
He is passionately against the collection of metadata and what they're doing with it and what they say they won't do with it, and yet we have no way of actually verifying. He does not believe that the United States government should be spying on its own citizens and collecting data on them with no warrant, no reason, no clear direction for it. He is absolutely against it and believes the Patriot Act needs to be radically dealt with on this. Yes, sir. We're living in a very different time. In the last 5 years, 5 years before this, how many of us would really have expected that every conversation on our cell phone could be recorded? We wouldn't have talked about that. That's a science fiction movie. That's what we knew for years and years and years. Now we know that there are people smart enough in our government who know how to turn our phone on remotely, record our conversation, and we won't even know the phone is on. That's the world we're living in. That's what we're dealing with today. He takes that very seriously. That is an invasion of privacy. We have those protections in the Constitution. While this administration may not believe that, I know Senator Cruz is passionate about those protections. That is about privacy. We have a protection in the Constitution against unreasonable searches and seizures. They have no right to do what they are doing. We have every right to defend our rights. And so he is going to continue to stand on that. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Barbara LaRue, what is Ted's thoughts on the import-export banks?
What are the senator's thoughts on the import-export bank? That America usually gets the short end of the stick. And that money, there's been a lot of fraud, there's been a lot of bad behavior and bad actors related to that. And we have serious, serious issues we need to deal with when it comes to that on our side. Yes, ma'am. Is he going to get rid of it? I think, here's what we all need to remember right now. Right now, we're standing against a man who wants to be an executive order kind of president. Right now, we're standing against a man who thinks he should be able to dictate the agenda for the entire country and that he can ignore Congress. Senator Cruz can say and believe and want passionately to do things like abolish the IRS, and we will all agree with him, but not one of us in this room wants him to be the dictator to make those things happen. We want them to go through Congress. That's how it's supposed to work. So while he definitely has an agenda and plans, and he will work to help get elected people that agree with him on those things, at the same time, he's not going to go up and write an executive order ending the Export-Import Bank.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
No, I just want to be clear, though, because I think a lot of people are looking for that. I think in many ways, we look at what's happening in D.C. and we say, well, that's not what I like, so I want to stop them, but we want the same behaviors from our guy. And we have to say, no, this behavior has to end now. It ends with this president. It will not go forward. And frankly, it needs to stop right this second, not even with just him at the end of his term. It needs to stop now. And we just have to be very clear about that, because there are a lot of people who are going to say, well, he'll just do the exact same thing. He's not that person.
No, I was just
So,
wondering
yeah.
what kind of a bill.
Absolutely. No, and that's the thing is, he's not supposed to write the bills. That's supposed to come from Congress. He can lead with that agenda. He can stand for that agenda. He can encourage. He can ask. He can, like I said, get people elected who will stand with that agenda with him. But it's not going to be President Cruz's job to write the legislation and make sure it happens.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, but he, without a doubt, his relationships that he has in the Senate now will help a great deal. I'm very proud of people like Senator Mike Lee who are in there, who I believe will stand with Senator Cruz should he become elected as president. But he absolutely, there's a lot we're going to have to work on eliminating, reforming, abolishing, all of the above. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Guy Hargrave's the name.
I'm sorry, Guy?
Yes.
Okay, yes, sir.
My concern is this, in regard to impeachment. I mean, why is it, or is it at all been a desperate attempt to impeach this president and to rid of him of his service in any way right now?
More than one U.S. representative has said plainly, the words that keep them from impeaching this president are the words President Joe Biden.
Well, I mean,
I hear what you're saying.
I don't know if it could be much worse.
Well, but we don't know.
Yeah.
We know what we're dancing with right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would come after that? And then Joe Biden could run for re-election.
Yeah,
Once they're in, it's hard to get them out.
that's true.
And so there's a lot of congressmen who are just like, look, even if we tried, it's not like you're going to get 2 down and then a 3rd one. And frankly, the next in line, I believe, is the Speaker of the House. My confidence isn't high on that one.
You're right.
So, and I know that's not a wonderful sunshine and rainbows explanation for why. But there are a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with the idea of Joe Biden being the President of the United States. I know how much he's embarrassed me as an American, as Vice President. If he gropes one more woman as President, I don't know what we're going to do.
One other question in reference to this J15. I'm a bit unlearned or ignorant in regard to that. I suppose. I mean, can you clarify some things in regard to what is taking place as far as that's concerned? I mean,
A lot of you have heard of J Helm 15?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. For those who aren't clear, this is a coordinated effort by federal law enforcement and some state and local law enforcement agencies as well as military to do some training exercises that are supposed to be very realistic and on the ground to help the men and women in our military, when they serve abroad, have some practice and training in what they would be doing in other nations in service to our country. There is a lot of anxiety around this for a number of reasons, one of them being it is so secretive. We don't know what they're doing. They're purposely telling the people that are training to be plain clothes. It's for them to practice being unnoticeable in a group or a crowd. If they are noticed, then that means they're not doing their job well enough, and that makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable not only being secretive, but in the way that the administration and much of the leadership has kind of brushed off everyone's questions. Texas has taken it very seriously. The governor is watching it very closely. I don't know about you, but I love Governor Greg Abbott. He is the only one standing against this administration with a spine, I think. He's watching it very closely. Because of all of the inquiries and concerns and frustration, there are even 2 counties in the state that have declined, and they're not going to participate anymore. Because people asked questions and said, we're not comfortable with this. And so the local elected officials said, never mind, we're not going to be a part of this. I can understand why people are upset about it and nervous about it. I've come across communications from former military members who say, don't be stressed out by this. We used to do this all the time. This is how we got ready for these different nations and the operations we had to do. But I've also heard former military members say, I don't like how this is going. This isn't right. There's a lot of information on all sides of it, without a doubt. And it can be hard to sift through it and discern who is accurate, who's telling the truth, and who's blowing things out of proportion or who's in denial. That can be very difficult. That can be a challenge, without a doubt. Here's what I do know. I know the God I serve. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that every time difficult things have happened, he has had the willingness and the desire to speak to people who will hear his voice and tell them how to behave and how to respond. If nothing happens with all this, which I'm confident everything is going to be okay, and I'm glad that our military men and women can be in Texas and have a safe place to train before they go abroad to a place that is not safe to do their job,
So be it.
so be it. I know the people of Texas support the military like no one else. And that we will do anything for the men and women in uniform to make sure they are safe. And if that means they have to do some practice here, and it may make us uncomfortable, I know the people of Texas are willing to do that. But I also know if there is any bad behavior or there are any bad actors, I also know how the people of Texas will respond. So either way, I've got my God, I've got a great boss who pays attention to this, I have a great governor who's paying attention to this, and I have a great sharp shot eye. I'm feeling okay. Does that answer your question?
I appreciate it.
Yes. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am, in the back. Please say your name.
My name is Joanne Kennedy. I am Vice President of the Republican Women of Trinity County. And I'm also a veteran's widow, and I also have a son who just retired for 28 years in the military. I'd like to know what Senator Cruz's intentions and thoughts are on rebuilding the national defense of our country and our military that has had the heart slashed out of it in the last few years.
I agree, and I just want to say too, thank you not only to the servicemen and women, but to the families who support them and make this happen. I cannot imagine my son going abroad. Thank you very much for what you've done to support him. And to raise a young man who has that kind of courage means he must have a bold mama. Senator Cruz believes in peace through strength, just like President Reagan. Our military has been treated abominably.
Yes.
Their religious freedoms are being stripped from them.
Absolutely.
The very thing they have fought for in this for this country and fought for other people for in other countries is being taken away. That's a serious problem. Senator Cruz is passionate about their religious freedom. We must have the best, most agile, best prepared military in the world if we are going to stand firm against the enemies of this nation and our values. Senator Cruz is not interested in going around being the world police, but he's passionate about being ready to stand against anyone who thinks they can harm the hair on any head in this nation. This is going to mean not only making sure that the men and women in our military have all of the supplies they need to do the job they're asked to do, that they put their lives on the line for, but it also means taking care of them back on Main Street when they get back to this country, and we honor the promises we made to them when they come back home from their service. That means having a VA that does its job, is honest with its people, spends its budget wisely, and fires people who don't do what they're supposed to do by our veterans. Give them the money they need. Give them the freedom to do the job we're asking them to do, and stand back and let them do it, and thank them with all our hearts and passion when they come home. That's what Senator Cruz believes we need to be doing for our military. Yes, ma'am.
I have one more comment, and you might want to mention this to him. I know for a fact that my son had never missed making a promotion when he applied. And 2 years ago, he applied for general. And I had been told many times in his change of command ceremonies that he was general material. He did 3 tours in the Pentagon. And the last tour was when they did all the budget cuts and cut the heart out of the military. As a general rule, I understand, this is secondhand information, that they usually promote 35 plus colonels to general. And at least half a dozen of them are usually aviators. That year, they promoted 6, and none of them were aviators. And so 30 young men who were very experienced in several different conflicts throughout the world and in various managerial duties and areas of command went back to civilian life to remake the life that they had missed. And he's educationally qualified that he can make his own way in civilian life. But that was the biggest blow, and not just to him, but to all those men that he had been in command of, and he still keeps in touch with. And so, because of money or whatever reason, they brought up younger men and let the older ones went on and retired, inexperienced ones, but did not promote the ones that had the most experience in all of these conflicts.
Thank you for sharing that. And if you don't mind, the senator has a military liaison in the DC office that he focuses completely on the military and the VA, and so military men and women, servicemen and women, as well as veterans. If you wouldn't mind communicating that story with him or having your son visit with him, because the senator is very much interested in learning how these people are being treated, what the problems are. I think many of us feel that our military has been dramatically weakened by political correctness, whether it's in how we recruit or how we promote or how we let people engage in their religious freedoms, either on base or off. Political correctness is absolutely a chokehold on our military right now. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that because they'll ask more questions than I will, they'll know more about it than I will, but they would like very much to know exactly what you've just said. Yes, ma'am, so thank you for sharing, I appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
What about all the secrecy on this trade act that the president's pushing?
Okay, anybody nervous about all these trade agreements that are going on right now? Yes. Anyone feel like there's a whole bunch of jumbled communication and you can't keep it clear? Yes, that's how this media functions. That's how it works for them. It's also how the left functions. The educated people who have the facts and data and information are not helpful to the left. Okay, 3 different things happening at the same time. And it's easy to mix them up because of the acronyms and the abbreviations and the way people communicate about them. There is the Trade Partnership Agreement, there's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and there's Fast Track. Has everyone heard all 3 of these?
Yeah.
Has everyone heard them all basically in the same conversation? Yeah, people are mixing them up because of that. Okay, currently the way we operate, the president and his, I hate to call them leadership team, but the president and his team are free to negotiate trade agreements without Congress really intervening. And then the president just shows up and says, this is what we've negotiated, sign off on it. Congress is saying no more. That is what the Trade Partnership Agreement will do. It will require the president, whoever that may be, to be completely open about all of the negotiations and the process. How many of us would like to see that with what's going on with Iran right now? The Trade Partnership Agreement would require that of the president. It would also require that any agreement that the president comes to with another country or maybe more than one nation has to be published and posted for 60 days for Congress and the public to be able to read. How about that for a change in Washington right now? It's important to understand that this will increase accountability for the administration, whoever's administration it's going to be. That is why Senator Cruz supports it. He also supports it because it is a trade agreement with multiple nations where we have the weaker end of the deal, and this is an opportunity for us to strengthen that deal when it comes to trade with these other nations. I'm sorry, ma'am?
Can we enforce that law on that president? Because the president decides everything his own.
He does
And
do
hide
that.
everything on
Right.
that.
Right.
And we don't really know.
At this time, with the passing of the trade partnership agreement, right now, the only trade agreement it would impact is Iran. But frankly, I want that dealt with
Yes.
quick. And frankly, for the sake of the nation of Israel, I want it dealt with now.
Exactly.
So that right now, that's the only agreement it's really going to impact. With much prayer, hopefully there won't be another one that this president will do, and it will be the next president that this will impact the most. That's the trade partnership agreement. Okay, so, thank you very much, Vicki. Then you have the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Again, lots of secrecy, people keeping things hidden. We don't know what's completely in it. People aren't allowed to take it out of the room when they're reading it and studying it. The senator is reading these documents for the trade partnership agreement, for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He is reading it. He is taking the time to digest all of this. It's not like this is a one-pager on any level. He has some of the brightest minds in America who work for him that are legal scholars, constitutional scholars, who are talking through all of this with him because it is endlessly complicated. There are a lot of nations as well in that particular agreement that we don't have trade relationships with, that it could be very beneficial to the United States, could be very beneficial to the state of Texas. Texas is a huge exporter of goods worldwide. We can almost be our own nation. We have such an economy and such strength. We've been blessed as a state to be able to produce so much, and there are many jobs that rely on those foreign trade agreements here in Texas. So he's very much for free trade, but he's also also passionate about transparency and honesty and openness. And he's going to continue to work for all of those while processing these different pieces of legislation, agreements, that sort of thing. Does that explain it a little bit better?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Free trade, yes. Secrecy, no. And he's working hard to deal with that. High accountability for the president, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So, excuse me. So, whenever you're reading about things like this, I encourage you to take a deep breath before you read the information and take a deep breath after. And make sure you check the facts and the sources of the people who are sending you this information. There are a lot of people who start fires because they like to see things burn.
That's right.
And if we blow up, if we have internal combustion, every time someone sends us an email about something that's got some kind of rumor or idea, or this is what he said, or that is what he said, you will combust internally, but we as a movement of conservatives will absolutely implode. We have to be thoughtful. We have to take a deep breath. We have to remember, not everything people send us, not everything is accurate. Not everything has the whole story. But what I do know is the senator has 7 federal offices in the state of Texas that if you call and ask, what is he doing on this? Why? We'll answer all of your questions. I do know that. Don't let people's personal fear put you in a perpetual state of fear. The left needs us to be afraid because then we make decisions out of panic instead of out of wisdom. They need it. They love it. They want to watch us burn. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Don't let them stir you up. Anyone that can make you angry or scared owns you.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, yes, ma'am. Your name, please?
I just wanted to say that in all of that paperwork we passed out, there are 2 sheets of paper that talk about the trade agreement. One of them is an opinion piece by a blogger that I am not familiar with, but it seems to be very good. And then a day later, we got a release at Ted, a statement he had made. So you have both there to kind of take it in. what set a lot of us on fire was actually Fox News. It said, the headline was that all the GOP had practically signed off to give Obama more power. And of course, we all just went up in smoke, and me too.
Well, and I encourage everyone to remember, even with Fox News, they are media. If it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
Even if it's your own blood, because your blood is boiling. That's what they're going to go with. And if you'll notice, every commercial break on Fox is an emergency, just breaking kind of thing. Like, take a deep breath. I get some news from them too, but sometimes I just get it off the internet so that my head doesn't explode listening to the yelling and the screaming and the breaking news and all that stuff. It's very easy to get that way quickly.
It is.
Yeah.
And when you check into it a little deeper, you find out it isn't quite like they first said it was, whatever it is.
Well, and I know this is hard to imagine, but believe it or not, the media does not always call our office to get the facts first. It's a shocker, folks. I'm telling you, but they don't always do that first. So again, call our office. Call the DC office, call any of the 7 that are here in the state and ask. Don't be afraid. I do ask, because these are my people, to be nice.
Yep.
Screaming at a 22-year-old kid that is trying to answer your question is not going to put you on my good list. I love our staff. Every one of them is passionate about liberty and freedom in this country. And not a one of them is responsible for what Fox News put on that morning. Please call them and be respectful.
Yes.
You can say exactly what you want to say. Please don't yell at them. Please don't cuss at them, because you know what happens when you do that? They put you on hold and I pick up the phone. And I'll be kind and I will be as much like Jesus as I can when I pick up the phone. But I will make it clear you won't yell at my team again. Because that's not how we treat our people.
Right.
That I have never, ever, ever, in 3 years of being with him, ever seen the senator lose his temper. Have you? No. He treats even the people who disagree with him with respect and courtesy, gives them the opportunity to actually answer the questions he asks, listens to what they have to say, and smiles when he gives a response. That's what our movement needs if we want to grow. Not fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, yelling, screaming, cursing, calling names. You could go down the list.
Yep.
Agreed? Yes, what's your next question? Yes, sir.
As you probably know, the Texas legislature almost had a chance to vote on the Convention of States. And I was wondering, does Ted Cruz support Texas voting for an application for a Convention of States?
No, because here's the trick of that. You can rewrite and edit all you want. That won't make them obey. We have a fantastic Constitution. We just have a poor excuse for a leadership right now. And changing and making changes to, or editing, or updating, or revising, or anything you want to say about the Constitution will not make them honor it or obey it. For me, that's like saying, well, there's a loophole in the gun show. When it comes to,
what about the 27 amendments we currently have? We're obeying those.
I don't think we're obeying them. I think they're totally disregarding just about every single piece of the Constitution they can, and then they're twisting it, taking it out of context any way they can to make it work the way they want. And when it doesn't work the way they want, they really don't care. They just write an executive order, and they've got tons of people in agencies that need to be abolished, honoring and doing exactly what the executive order says.
But the idea of allowing a convention to create amendments that would give people standing so they can fight the government, which they don't have today because of the way the laws are written and how the judicial system has created the situation where the public cannot sue, public cannot fight if they don't have standing.
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I absolutely understand, and I still say to that, even then, it's the people in leadership that have to change for any of that to go forward. We can change the way it works in being able to sue the government, but if we have a whole bunch of judges appointed by a liberal pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage president, those judges will just choose not to take those cases at the Court of Appeals. We have to change the leadership from top to bottom. And we have to have leadership in the House and the Senate that when the president gets up there and says, I'm abolishing the IRS, I'm auditing the Federal Reserve, I'm cleaning house when it comes to the leadership in all of our federal agencies, I'm going to serve our military like they serve us. We need a House and a Senate that will go along with it. And we need to be ready. This isn't just a presidential election year. We need to remember 23 Republican U.S. Senate seats are up in 2016. Even if we get the president that we want, they could possibly take the Senate. And then we're stuck in neutral. We have to be ready to pay attention to every race from top to bottom. Our Senate seats in Texas are fine. I encourage every one of you to pick 2 or 3 states outside of Texas that you can focus on those Senate races and help, encourage, pray for, donate, make calls for, whatever you need to do. Keep the good ones and change the guard on the bad ones, but make sure it's a conservative. Don't let the Democrats grab that seat. Yes, sir.
What about all these UN treaties that are coming in that the presidents have signed off on? How is he on states' rights?
Well, Senator Cruz is very passionate about states' rights.
Yeah.
The 9th and 10th Amendment means leaving everything to the states.
Right.
Not everything open for the federal government to take over. So when it comes to states' rights, it's U.S. sovereignty and states' rights.
Amen.
And the UN can take a hike. It's also going to mean, though, that he's going to have to stand strong against a lot of world leaders and probably stand alone, except for, Lord help us all, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes.
That man is the leader of the free world right now.
Right.
But I know one candidate in particular running for president that's more passionately for Israel than anyone else on the field, and that's Senator Cruz. We have to stand with Israel.
Yes.
We must, on every level. There are certain candidates who think we shouldn't be helping them or involved or engaged. I strongly disagree. There's a bastion of freedom standing alone on a very narrow strip of a very big piece of land, and they are holding their own.
Yes.
We need to stand with them. If we back off,
Look out.
look out. Exactly.
Yes.
So, no, Senator Cruz, U.S. sovereignty, states' rights, above that, the rights of the individual. We have a right to life from beginning to end, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but not the pursuit of government guaranteeing our happiness.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, sir.
Another one. How, in the Texas Congress right now, are there any bills that are taking opposition to the gay marriage and opposition in that family structure?
Okay, so let me say first of all, I am not an expert on the Texas legislature. That is a completely different animal than what we do with the U.S. Senate. And Senator Cruz is very strong on, again, states' rights and letting the legislators who were elected within the state make the decisions and make the votes. There are some times where he does get involved and be a part of what's going on in the state when it comes to movement like that. But on the whole, he lets those elected officials do the job they were asked to do. There are bills that are looking to protect traditional marriage within the state of Texas, but also protect the pastors in this state.
Yes.
There's a bill that just died, though,
Right.
that would have protected religious agencies who focus on adoption. And it died in the House and the Senate. Again, I'm not an expert on all of those, but I do know there are a lot of people working very, very hard in the Texas legislature to protect marriage. And even if the ledge fails, I know Governor Greg Abbott will not. That man stands for marriage passionately. He has worked very, very hard. And whatever comes out of the Supreme Court in June, I'll tell you right now, I know where Governor Greg Abbott's going to stand. I don't know about the rest of the governors in this country, but I know where he'll be, and I'm proud to stand with him on it. Senator Cruz believes marriage is between a man and a woman, but he does not believe that the Supreme Court ever was given the right by the Constitution to tell us what marriage will and will not be. He does not believe that the legislature is elected to tell us what marriage will and will not be. He does not believe that the legislature, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House were elected to tell us whether or not children will have parents. And whether the parents will have a right to say what happens in their child's life. They were not elected to do that. Individual rights, parents' rights, the rights of the children to be protected from predators.
Yes.
Those things are very important. But what's happening right now on the federal level, no, he does not agree with it. The states make these decisions, not a group of judges who have practically no accountability right now.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What Fred asked what's his feelings on some of these worthless agencies that we have in Washington that are kind of hanging on? It seems like government gets in there and its only job is to grow itself. I mean, we got the education agency, all this foolishness that doesn't amount to nothing, and all they do is suck up money.
So, I have a great story about that. He was asking about all of the agencies that just basically grow without bounds and without limits in the government right now. Senator Cruz does believe in abolishing it. If it's not written in the Constitution, it's really not supposed to be there. But that means appointing heads and directors of agencies who believe that way as well. Having worked under the chiefs of staff that the senator has chosen, I will tell you they are very budget conscious. I've seen the people he hires, because how many of us have really learned it's not who you elect, it's going to be everybody they appoint that's going to change this nation, right? They lead, they have the agenda, they have the goals, they cast the vision, but they're not the ones standing at the agency each day deciding, do we really need to be doing that? Is this a policy that we need to be implementing? Who they hire, who they appoint to do those jobs is incredibly important.
Yes.
Right. Nobody's overseeing this thing, from what I can look at.
Oh, they're absolutely overseeing it, but growth is good for them. Exactly. I mean, government, it's a growth industry right now. That's the place to be. And he does not agree with that. We are saddling the children and grandchildren of this nation with a debt that will very soon be impossible to pay at the speed we're going. If we do not put a stop to this, not just gently curb, gently reduce. I mean, he has suggested abolishing the IRS and putting all 50,000 agents on the border to guard the border, and that will help with our situation. I mean, Senator Cruz said very plainly, can you imagine that you've either walked across, run across, swam across, ridden across in a car, truck, whatever, and the first person you see is an IRS agent asking for a portion of your income. You'll probably want to go back. Absolutely. But there is one agency that does need the money and the funding to do its job, and that is our border security.
Yes.
That's not just one agency, that's multiple, it's coming across, it goes across the board. And Senator Cruz believes we need to completely secure the border, that a jackrabbit shouldn't be able to cross the border that we don't know about it.
Right.
And whether that's boots on the ground or the highest kind of security that we have now. Are you about to kick me off? I was just curious.
I am just moving in here.
We should know every bit of movement when it comes to our borders, and that's not just us and Mexico. We have to remember the gentleman from 9/11 came through the Canadian border. They were overstayed on visas. We have a customs and immigration service that is being given contradictory orders, not being properly funded, and just being outright told, don't even enforce the laws. I know Border Patrol agents who are being told, don't enforce the laws, don't ask them questions, catch and release.
Yep.
That's a problem. So while there are a lot of agencies like the IRS that Senator Cruz wants to abolish and altogether, there are some that need reinforcement. They need the dollars to do their job. They need the technology to do their job. And they need a president who will support them in being law-abiding, which is what those men and women signed up to do law enforcement and to protect the people of this country. That's what they were told to do when they signed up for the job. It's not what they're being told to do now, and that has to change.
Yes.
Any other questions before Mickey sends me home?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just being prepared like a good.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know, is he for or against Common Core, and if he's for it, what are his reasons?
Absolutely against. Education, those decisions should be made by the parents of the children, and those parents should be electing their local school boards. The federal government should not be dictating any sort of curriculum or plans. It belongs on the local level.
Yes.
Local officials, local electeds, who can be held accountable and who can be kicked out. Sometimes people even run for school board and they may not win, but it sure scares the school board, doesn't it, Linda? It holds them accountable. Right now with the Department of Education, we have a whole bunch of unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats trying to dictate to the people of this state and nation what they can and can't teach, how they can teach it, and in what way they can teach it.
And so we need to work on our Texas Board of Education.
Absolutely. The local school boards, the State Board of Education, absolutely hold them accountable. Every single one of them. What's great about your local school board is you can probably find out within a week where they go to church, where they live, where they work, where they shop for their groceries. You have every opportunity to ask them, why did you pick this particular curriculum? Why did you not go with this curriculum? Why do you think we need to add more tests to our teachers and children?
Yeah.
Why are you not letting our teachers teach?
Yeah.
Why do you think, why would you even think for a minute, my teacher signed up to be a bureaucrat? They signed up to be an educator. No, Senator Cruz is passionate about education on the most local level, and it starts with the parents to the children, and then the parents decide from there who else gets to be involved by choosing whatever school district, choosing their school board, or anything beyond that. Does that answer your question? I had two more over here. I think you raised your hand, yes, sir?
Gerald Hargrave, I wonder if you foresee anything in the future that would interrupt this next election.
Do I foresee anything in the future that will interrupt this next election?
That's all kinds of things.
I am not the prophet Daniel. Let's be really clear. I understand, I believe where that's coming from.
It appears as though the federal government is in a process of federalizing the local police departments across the country.
Okay, yes.
And
there, I believe it's Columbus, Ohio, agreed to have their police department start working under federal. But while I don't agree with them, I agree with the right of the local people to decide whether or not that's how they want their police department to be run.
And that was their choice.
Their choice. Not what I would choose for my local law enforcement, but I also know my county sheriff and my local police, chief of police, there's no way those guys would go for it. I agree with their freedom to choose if that's what they want to do. There's no way Senator Cruz is interested in the federal government telling local law enforcement how best to patrol the streets and protect the citizens of their city, their county, their district, their state. As for your first question,
Ma'am?
I understand where a lot of folks are coming from and their anxiety about whether or not the elections are going to happen in 2016. I've heard that. We've had a lot of calls about it. We've had a lot of questions about it.
But there's nothing concrete.
I have not seen any sort of evidence that's concrete. I have not seen anything that people have really brought forward. I know that we're all overwhelmed and frustrated and exhausted by the way this administration comes at us from every single angle and seems to go at us nonstop. But they also have an army of bureaucrats that are in the government growth business who want it to stay that way. But I believe that the people of this nation, even the ones that voted for this president, are ready for something new. There's a lot of buyer's remorse on him right now. But there's a lot of passion and excitement for those who are willing to run and step out and do the next thing. I know who my man is for this presidential race, and even if you don't agree with who that is, what I'll say is there are some extraordinary men and one good woman in this race already. It's going to be lively, energetic, passionate. They're all working very hard already. They already have millions of people working on their behalf. It's going to be an exciting year next year. This should not be a year of fear. It should not. This should be a year of excitement. Y'all, it's almost over. He's almost out of office. There's a lot of people ready to replace him, even people who voted for him. Be encouraged by that. Be encouraged. Yes, sir.
Quick, I know what you spent a lot of time on it, but how does Ted Cruz feel about all these secret agencies doing all this stuff, need to know stuff in the government?
So Senator Cruz does believe that there are some absolutely important basic national security issues that we have to deal with, and they have to deal with it in secret, understandably, but the vast majority of what they're pulling and doing, absolutely not. Again, he doesn't believe in the secrecy and everything under the cover of darkness. It's transparency, it's openness, it's accountability. There needs to be serious audits of every one of these security agencies. People who will not be afraid to ask the tough questions and make them answer those questions. Right now, we have a State Department that's not even complying with questions about Benghazi, and how long ago did that happen? But we have an administration that's letting it happen. I'm ready for an administration that, like the senator said when he was going to get elected, tears down the drapes, sells the silver, and opens it up to the public. That's what I'm looking forward to. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about the fact that the news media is going to determine who gets on debates or who doesn't?
The Republican Party has already started dealing with the news media when it comes to debates. They sent letters out to all of the potential candidates as well as those who declared, saying very plainly, let's not have the bloodletting that we had the last time when they did debates. We are only going to do this many debates. We will only do them with these news programs. And there will be certain news commentators, I wouldn't even call them that, they're not even that, who will not be asking questions during these debates either. They want to deal with the bias.
Yes.
And put a stop to it. They've had enough.
Amen.
Now, it's going to mean that the candidates have to be in agreement about this and say, all right, this is how we're going to do debates. If we want to put a stop to how the media twists things and takes things out of context and gives the most ridiculous questions that have nothing to do with policy and everything with dog and pony shows and all of that junk. But I know one candidate that's been able to put the media back on its backside every single time they try to question him, and that is Ted Cruz.
How about that Texas reporter thing?
Oh,
Yes.
Best thing I've heard in weeks.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Mickey has a really great article about the senator who was being questioned again and again, why are you anti-homosexual? And he just laid it out and said, why are you anti-Christian? Just fired right back and said, I know you want to keep asking these questions, but you want to talk about the real attack on homosexuals? Talk about the fact that ISIS is executing them constantly in the Middle East. Let's talk about really what's going on in that regard.
Yes.
And Senator said, but you don't want to talk about that. So let's talk about why are you so against
And
Christians?
you can hear the little guy in the background going, no, no. We are going to have to just take it.
Yes, no, y'all need to go.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, y'all have homes,
Did you
places to
have
go.
one quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Fox News has come out and said their first debate was only going to include the top 10. Is that true?
So Barbara just asked, Fox News just came out saying the first debate is only going to include the top 10. First of all, how many of us are a little blown away by the fact that there are 10 Republican candidates? There are a lot. As one who used to be one of 9, I totally understand where they're coming from. How they determine that is important. It's not like they're going to just go in alphabetical order or in order that people announced. What they usually do, and I don't know if Fox has changed their policy, but what they usually do is they do polling to determine which candidates have the greatest support, and those are the ones they put on the stage. So I can understand why they do that, because trying to keep people's attention span for more than an hour, but getting people to answer questions and actually give substantive answers, you can't have more than 10 people on the stage. You can't. And so it is important that whoever you support, if you want to see them on that stage, you got to get to work for them now. I know I want Senator Ted Cruz on that stage. I know he consistently does well in the polling in the early voting states. I know he does consistently well in the polling with the national news media, depending on which one you pick. But I understand where they're coming from. To put more than 10 people on the stage, we won't get more than 10-second answers. And frankly, that's going to let a lot of these folks get away with things that they shouldn't get away with.
But how do we know about the polls?
How do you know about the polls?
Yeah, because how do they take those polls? Because I know Ted's got a lot of conservative followers, you know, and
You wonder who the
news
heck they're
media out there.
Yeah, you wonder who they're calling, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it depends on the polling agency that they use. Every news group has kind of their favorite. Some of you hear of Pew. I mean, there's different groups that do polling. So it just depends on which group they choose. And that polling group does work very hard. I mean, I've worked alongside polling people as they're deciding who to call, how many people to call, what they're looking for. These polling agencies, they have every kind of information you can imagine. They have how much you make a year. They know how much your house is worth. They have how you have voted in the past, whether you're registered as a Republican, Democrat, or registered at all, whether you've not voted. They know who they're looking for. They're able to take all of that data and pour it into a formula to determine what people to call. And then they will call them and ask, what do you think? Who do you support? Why do you support them? Where do you want them to stand on this? Where do you stand on that? It's a huge process that they go through. And they analyze every single question to determine whether that question is actually going to get the answer that they are asking, or whether it's going to shoot people off down rabbit trails. It's a very complex process. I don't know who Fox is using right now for their polling, but my guess is that's what they will do, is put out a large sample poll to determine who are the top 10 candidates and then invite them to join the debate.
See, they've got Jeb Bush as #1, and I can't believe that.
Yeah, well, and I can understand why people don't understand why, here in Texas, why people may not understand why Jeb Bush is #1, because we have an amazing senator here who's done a stellar job, but the rest of the states don't know him like we do, which is why he's out on the road right now. That's why he's traveling nonstop between DC, Texas, and then the early voting states, is to help people get to know him. And that's our job, is to help get the word out.
But you've got Scott Walker and a lot of Kid Carson and all these other, Rand Paul, Rubio, and all those from other states, and still the news media say Jeb Bush is #1 so far in the polls.
And it's possible he may be #1 at the moment, but again, once folks start to get to know them and they travel to these different states and they start doing polls, I understand what the news media says is their polls, but they also pay attention to the fact that in these early voting states, at different events, there are straw polls happening there as well. And the senator is winning them again and again and again.
But a lot of your uneducated voters listen to those polls, and that's what they
That's what our job is. yours and mine, to tell everybody about that, to be on his email list, to make sure you're getting the updates on where he's been, where he's spoken, to make sure you share his speeches every time you see one online, whether you share it via email, Facebook, Twitter, however you do it. That's our job, to educate them. I guarantee you the media does not consider it their job to educate people, not one bit. So, I believe that's it. Mickey, thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for coming. I'll answer any questions you want after as well, but y'all have a great evening.